VTalk, a podcast by vTech Solution.
Hello, everybody. My name is Mike Pereira. I'm the Chief Strategy Officer here at vTech Solution. Welcome back, Frank. It's great to have you with us again. For our listeners who may not have caught the previous discussion, could you just start by giving a quick commercial on who you are, sir, and a little background on Frank?
Sure. Background on Frank. Frank was the prior CTO of the Air Force for 11 years, doing all things technology. Before that, I was the CIO, the CTO, and the ops director for AT&T Government Solutions for 10 years. Before that, I was, of course, another CTO. I was a chief scientist. I was everything else associated with technology. And since I retired from the Air Force, I've been doing technology consulting across the board for large companies, small companies, and those in need.
Yes. Well, thank you, sir. And again, we are without question blessed to have you here. In our last conversation, and that was 2 years ago in 2022, and a lot, especially not just the federal government and the cyber world has changed, but we discussed some of the federal mandates for the agencies to implement their ZTA principles, right? For those that in the audience, that's your zero trust principles by 2024. Frank, can you summarize some of the key points that if you can remember, that we covered in that interview, especially concerning some of the primary cybersecurity threats like ransomware and some of those DDoS attacks?
Well, you see, the government went to zero trust because of those attacks, because it was not an easy way to block those attacks. And, ransomware was always, in fact, ransomware is still around. It's like it's still at the 20% level across the board. So understand that even though 2 years ago it was probably higher, it is still going on right now. This is something that is very difficult to stop. And, and if you'll see what's going to happen is a lot of them are going towards the bigger banks, bigger hospitals, and everything else because they can get more money out of them.
Right.
The other thing we talked about was DDoS. DDoS has always been a problem. It was a problem way back when. And it's the easiest way to actually stop operations. If I can DDoS your site, nobody's going to be able to get to it. Nobody can get out of it. It's going to be like, you've not existed anymore. And that's probably the easiest thing to do. And it happens a lot too. I mean, we can talk about possibly DDoS was one of the things that happened lately, but you never know for sure, or just a malware attack to a particular element within the components. So you never know.
Well, and to your point too, I think what I believe everybody's social security number has recently been hacked, right? So that's
yes, I think a lot of things have been hacked already, and it's not so much hacked. A lot of it is from ransomware and from releasing.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you think they got the stuff from?
That's right. Yeah, and there have been several systems and agencies, especially the state and local level, that we have supported that have paid the ransomware and then got hit a second time, right? So yeah, very interesting how that's going to move forward. Okay, so going into the ZTA overview, right, your zero trust architecture overview, you emphasize the importance of ZTA in mitigating cybersecurity threats. For some of our new listeners, could you explain what ZTA looks like and why it's so critical in today's landscape?
Okay, it's not a magic bullet. It's not a tool you buy. It's a philosophy of how you manage things with various tools, with various policies, with various processes.
Right.
So you just can't go out and buy ZT. We all could buy ZT, we'd all buy it by now and all be done by now. And you never hear about it again.
Right.
Okay. The first element of ZT is you never trust, but you always verify. That's the essential element, and it applies to everything. First thing it applies to is people. You have to authenticate who you are and what you're supposed to be doing there. That's authorization. It also applies for non-person entities, what they call MPEs. That's any server, anything that tries to attach to anything that you have. And the obvious one is backup devices. Yeah. And you can see that could be a threat vector. If you're backing up to something and you don't know what you're backing up to, guess what? You may be backing up your data to somebody who's going to release it. So you have to have not only persons, but you also have non-person entities. The next thing is that you want to be sure that your devices, your laptops, anything you connect to is secure. So a lot of times you have to validate that the security is there, established already. You have the latest version of the operating system and everything else, because that is a threat vector all the time. If I get into your laptop, I can probably get into everywhere you got. Next is the network and the environment. Everything should be encrypted across the board. And you hear a lot about microsegmentation.
Yes, I have from you.
Yeah, yes. Microsegmentation is basically, I want to direct you as a person only to an application through the network. A lot of times right now, what happens is you go to a firewall and the firewall stops you and it lets you through the firewall to anything that's outside of that firewall.
Right.
That's a problem
Yeah.
because it doesn't know who you're going to and you can go to anybody.
Right.
So microsegmentation prevents you from going to any application. It's supposed to gear you towards a particular application, only one application. Now, possibly you get two applications and it may be messy, but that's microsegmentation. That's how it's supposed to work as a process.
That's brilliant.
So
Okay,
on top
great.
of that, you have to have various you're supposed to be patching automation. You're supposed to automate all the time. You're supposed to patch automatically. You're supposed to keep looking for things. This is where we get to software inventory and everything else, which we'll talk about later. But let's wait till later for that one.
Yeah.
And then obviously you have to have visibility and analytics, continuously monitoring what's going on. Even though you think you've got everything, you may not.
Right.
And so you got to do something to validate that it's really going on. Remember, always never trust, always verify or validate. This is the verify again. Make sure you did it right because you may not have. And obviously, data is you're supposed to have data encrypted in motion, but you should also have data encrypted at rest and targeted for access control. And I'll tell you a story we had when we were first doing cloud-based applications and everything else, and they had to actually take the binary and move it to storage because they were moving around servers and everything getting service. We found that they were not encrypting the binary when they put it in storage.
Oh no.
We had to specify, yes, we wanted the binary encrypted because obviously if somebody could steal the binary, they could steal everything that's in there. And any data that was transited in the buffers. Okay, cool. So we were like, no, we can't do that. So again, you have to be very careful about what you do
Yeah.
and always verify that it's done the way you think it is.
Well said. Well said. Okay, well, that's going to segue us into the evolution of cyber threats, and I think that's across the board, right? I mean, you mentioned banks earlier. We're seeing those false websites now where they've mimicked a Bank of America or they mimicked a Chevy Chase, and you put your username and password in there, and they have your information.
Right.
Since our last discussion, you talked about how some of those cyber threats have evolved. Have you seen any new trends or tactics around the ransomware or DDoS attacks?
Well, I don't think those so much. I think the phishing is worse now. Phishing is those websites. Phishing is every way possible to get you in there, and they're using AI to phish.
Oh, wow.
So I can actually, I can probably come on with a video or speaking to you, and you would think it was me. And I always say, enter the information because I really need it, put it into chat. And guess what? I got you.
Yeah.
So you can be very careful about phishing, looking where it's coming from all the time, because that's increased dramatically. I mean, it's email, text, phone calls. Phone calls are a big deal all the time. Video, websites, phishing.
You bring up such a great point because you're seeing that more and more now with the AI videos, like you said, and it's like I'm talking to you, Frank. How how do people counter that? I mean, I know you talk about verify and validate. I mean, is it something where we got to pick up the phone while you're asking me in real time? Hey, is this you?
Almost. It's like, the two-factor authentication piece, I go to the bank and the bank doesn't trust me with my password or my fingerprint and has to send me a text message,
Right. Okay.
Same issues. Now they're trying to figure out a way of showing that a video is a fraud, but that's really, really difficult. But you have to look at the sources more than anything else. If you look at your URL where everything's coming from, you sometimes can see, exactly what's going on. If it looks really fishy, or what of course they'd like to do is misspell words, so it looks a lot closer to what you think it is, and you just briefly look at it, it must be the site, So you need to watch out for that. I'll tell you the other attack vector that's very interesting is the IoT.
Internet of Things.
Internet of Things. Okay, let's play that game. Do you have anything electric in your house that monitors what you're doing? or monitors the heating system, look at your Ring doorbell. Is it centralized for updates? Guess what? You are subject to all sorts of things that IoT can come in. And if your IoT devices in your house are attached to your home network, instead of a segmented, less you micro segment your home network,
right? Which not the everyday citizen is doing,
right? You will find that they'll be in your network too,
and then into your Alexas and listening to you and all of the
everything associated with it. That is one of the vectors that people forgot about lots of times, and it has caused serious problems just because of that, especially the HVAC. The HVAC system was a perfect way of coming in. There's an update coming in your HVAC. Sure, okay, I like that. Guess what?
What a great point. What would you recommend then, Frank, to, I know we're talking federal government, but let's just say, because a lot's going around and enhancing the citizen experience, and, what would you recommend to the everyday, family or citizen to protect themselves?
This is hard because of the way that the IoT devices are out there. You just have to put them on their own network.
Okay.
And it's messy, but it's worth it in the long run just because of the problems you're into.
Right. You better know somebody that can create some honeypots for you or can come and assist you with that, right? Because it's not something that the regular, Joe Smith can just go up to Best Buy and do, right?
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's some scary stuff moving forward.
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about advancements in ZTA. What advancements or changes have you seen in the implementation of zero trust architecture over the past couple of years? And then kind of segue into that, are there any new and we kind of talked about it a little bit, but are there any new best practices that organizations should adopt?
Okay, let's take the last one first.
Yeah.
Yes. Eventually, yes. There's not, okay, NIST has put out all sorts of guidelines. DoD has put out guidelines. Again, these are guidelines. If they had a process that worked perfectly, it'd be wonderful. Right. However, it's not the case. Right. So, it's like checklist and look at things, but again, you have to figure out what you're doing and why you're doing it and look at it that viewpoint. I think that the newest things that have come as more authentication systems. Okay. You got most of the stuff, everything's two-factor basically coming back now all the time. I'm getting text messages back and says, are you really doing this? That's cool. Login.gov came about and they're doing the same thing. So for DoD level, or not DoD, federal government level, they're doing that as well. So I think authentication systems are much, much better now, especially biometrics on your phone, biometrics everywhere. Right. So they're advancing that technology. Okay. And it's either facial, or if you get to the real stuff, you get, your eye and everything else associated with it, but it's really messier. So I think that's improved significantly. And also part of that is the not only that's the authentication system, but the authorization system has improved also. So there are tools out there right now that can give you your authorizations to what you want to do based upon your attributes. So for instance, at your level of, we would give you access to financials, for instance, but we would know that automatically. And if you quit, we cut you off immediately. Or if you got demoted, we cut you off immediately based on your attributes. So we don't have to go through a paperwork drill to get rid of you, to delete your access. And that's always been a problem. A lot of times, it's word of mouth or paper that gets you access.
Yeah.
And the issue becomes, okay, you got access. How do you lose access? That is the harder question. Is it more word of mouth and paper?
Right.
People just forget about it.
Yes. And I've heard of nightmare stories like that too, right? Around some of the ICAM experiences. Yeah.
Yeah, they just forget about it. It's easier to forget than actually do the work.
Right.
It's like, where did Mike go? I thought he was here. Oh, he quit 2 years ago. Oh, I didn't ever know that.
Yes.
I see he's still doing payroll.
Exactly. And I've heard of some nightmare scenarios like that. Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Yeah. And that's
okay. So attribute-based access. Okay. That's very interesting. Okay. Well, let's go into the impact of remote work. OPM recently released a mandate or initiative to get everybody back, after Labor Day to 3 days a week. And it's my thoughts are once you've opened Pandora's box, good luck putting her back in there, right? But the shift to remote work has continued to impact cybersecurity. How have organizations adapted their security strategies to address the vulnerabilities introduced by remote access and mobile devices?
Okay, there's several ways, none of them which are perfect, unless you talk to some of the vendors who think they're perfect. But okay, let's take the phone, for instance.
Yeah.
Mobile device managers are a way to go onto the phone that actually segment your data and segment off your access control on that phone. And so a lot of times you'll have a mobile device manager that will be used to connect to your company that you can use on your private phone. And once you get off that mobile device manager, you can do things on your phone that is related to you. So it segments off the data and the access to only that time when you can be in the mobile device manager. And the mobile device manager monitors you continuously while you're doing this. So that's the way, one thing for the phone. Another way that we've seen actually work pretty good is when you do virtual mobile infrastructure. Basically, so what happens is, it says it's just bit screens that appear on your phone or on a device, and you don't have anything stored on those devices. So there's dumb, stupid devices that show bits. So data's not there, process is not there, it's just that. And that works well, except for lots of, it depends on where you are, how much throughput you need, everything else associated with it.
Right.
They actually push all the data to your screen as opposed to that. That's probably the easiest. When you think about anything else, because when the Air Force went that way too, they had a lot of problems because we had to have VDMs established. We had, because it was a problem across the board that we had issues with it. So everybody was trying to use their home computer, but it was very painful.
Oh yeah.
And so it never worked really right. And so eventually had to have special connections back and forth as to how you do this, or you have to use a government computer.
And I imagine you're going to have the reverse challenge too, right? Because now you're going to have, person X coming back into the office with their iPads or with their home devices, connecting to the networks. And I mean, just lots of vulnerabilities there.
Yes, that's one of the problems, and they have to have policy that says you do not connect your home devices to the network, whatever you do.
Please read, right?
Please read, please we will know it.
Yeah.
You can have network awareness too. I mean, you can monitor the network, and if you see a device that is unknown to the network, you just shut that connection right off.
Yeah. Yeah. So interesting. So challenges on both sides of that fence, right? Not only remote, but as these remote workers start coming back into the offices, we'll see what happens. Okay, great. Well, let's talk about some of the current state and some of the challenges. Supply chain and insider threats, right? In our previous talk, you highlighted the significance of supply chain and insider threats. How are organizations currently addressing these challenges, and what improvements have you seen in this area?
Okay, supply chains have improved a lot. People have looked at it now and have determined that they actually need to track everything that they have. Okay, that's the first thing. You need to track your inventory.
Right.
Most people don't know the current state of their inventory.
I don't know.
And they don't, if they even knew the current state, like the high level, they do not know the version numbers that are sitting in those boxes and in that software and in your laptops and things.
Yeah,
that's very important.
Yes.
So what you want to do is have your whole inventory done. And then what you want to do is look at your inventory and determine if there are vulnerabilities in that inventory. And there could be vulnerabilities in various ways. There are IVs and CVSs that come out that are, problems areas for you to look at. And so you have to be aware of, if I have this particular piece of software, does it have a problem? And if it is, you have to remediate that piece of software.
Yeah.
The other issue is that many pieces of software, even proprietary pieces of software, use open source libraries.
Oh, wow.
And I do mean proprietary pieces of software. So there are tools now that basically can go down that software, look at it, and tell you all the libraries that you have access to based upon that piece of software. And then the next thing is to look for vulnerabilities in those libraries. If you find a vulnerability in a library that's attached to your software, you have to remediate it.
Wow. Yeah.
This is one of the big issues that they found out there. That's the software side.
Yeah.
There's the hardware side.
Hardware side.
Hardware side is the same thing. You have to know your inventory. You have to know where it's coming from. Eventually, you'll probably get down to the chip level, know exactly where the chips are actually coming from. You're
Yeah.
going to have to get to that point sometime. And it's strange that when you buy something, let's say you buy a computer and you open up the computer and you find that a chip is made in a country that you didn't know before. What do you do?
Right. And not only that, I mean, we have a current customer that is doing the asset inventory exactly like you said, having challenges with the versions, but then even having a greater challenge with the ticketing system around those. Having tickets that are 2 or 3 years old, just because of that, some of those challenges, right? So it is a real thing out there with the agencies. There's no question.
There is. It's a really problem. And also, you got to think of end of life. Nobody thinks about end of life. You probably have software are sitting in your boxes that are end of life already, or will be end of life.
Yes.
What do you do with them?
Yes. Right.
And
How do you sunset those, right?
Yeah, and the other issue becomes all the time is that this is a real issue. I'm dependent upon this piece of software. It is going on end of life. I can't find another one. What do I do?
Yeah.
You rewrite everything around it,
Right.
or the other one is it has the CV associated with it as a problem. What do you do because you're dependent upon it? Do you take the risk and maintain it and keep on going? This is a risk analysis.
Yeah.
Supply chain management is a big risk analysis effort because you have to decide, can I live with that problem? Is my mission more important than somebody whacking into my problem or not? And this is very difficult at times to actually do this. And you have to understand, and somebody has to make that risk judgment.
Right.
So, yes,
Wow.
I'm willing to take the risk because I really need this, but in the background, I'm going to replace it. But it's going to take me, everything. It's going to take 3 months to replace it, but I'm going to have to live with that risk for at least 3 months until I find something else to replace it. And that's what you have to think about.
And somebody has to own that decision.
Right. Somebody has to own it and understand the risk associated with it.
Wow. Wow. Okay. No, that was wonderful. All right, let's talk about cloud security, the old cloud, right? With the ongoing transition from on-prem to cloud first, infrastructure situations, what are the current challenges organizations face in securing cloud environments, and how does ZTA play in those challenges?
Okay. First of all, everybody believes when you go to the cloud, everything is secure.
No.
It's not even close.
Right.
All you're doing is renting some capabilities. You're not doing anything else.
Right.
You have to apply the same technologies that you are doing if you were doing it in-house to the cloud structure. You have to have the authentication authorization capability. You have to have the security. You have to have the continuous monitoring. You have to have the encryption. And you have to make sure that you understand what the cloud is providing to you and what you have to do to get things done. One of the biggest problems we've seen is that, and I won't mention the cloud, but a lot of data is left unsecured because the user does not know that they're supposed to secure the data.
Right.
The idea is that they think it is secured because it was stored there. And the idea is, no, I'm sorry.
And that's going to grow, right, as this kind of hybrid cloud environment. I have certain applications over here in this cloud, and again, I won't name them either, but I imagine those security challenges will just become greater because now you have more points of failure and vulnerabilities, right?
Right, and you have to watch it because it's always the same. You're doing the same thing. You have to probably your ZT effort the same way. You just can't have any device connecting to your application that's sitting in a cloud.
Yeah, right.
Same idea, continuous monitoring. So really, what you've done is you alleviated the updating of your infrastructure. Is what you've alleviated.
Yeah.
And you've alleviated running out of power when you have surges, which is cool.
Yeah.
And so you don't have to reconfigure like you would have to do if you didn't have the cloud structure, or in the old days, we'd have to have 3 times the capacity in terms of servers just in case we had a surge.
Yep.
and
So
maintain all those servers. It's forever
yeah.
problems.
Yeah. Well said.
So there's two things that are getting rid of, but you have the same security and everything else problems that you had before.
Right. No, well said. You talked a little bit about this earlier, around the pico or micro segmentation and continuous verification. The importance of micro segmentation and the continuous verification within ZTA. Can you provide some real world examples of how these practices have been successfully implemented?
Well, the segmentation has been successful, or they're trying to make it successful. Let's put it that way.
Right.
There's tools out there that actually do this.
Yep.
The problem with the tool sets is that it takes work to do it. Okay, let's take a simple. I'm going to go to your company. I'm going to say, we're going to do micro segmentation of your network. You just tell me all your applications and where they are, who gets access to them. Question one, can you do that right away?
Right.
Because you're going to have to write a policy statement that says this is what it is and put that out there that way. Therefore, I need an ICAM solution ahead of you because I don't know who you are and verify. So you have to have those pieces established, and people are doing that. But it takes a long time to do that.
That's right. That's step one.
Right. That's step one. Now we're going. I mean, there's tools that you know about that go down to lower level, to the socket level, and do application transaction segmentation.
Yes.
So micro gets you there.
Yeah.
If you want to go farther into what's going on in the box at the socket level, you have to go to another level of security. And that also requires you to actually come up with some policies and some coordination, because you don't want for instance, you don't want the SQL server connecting to this particular module. It only connects to module A.
Right.
So that's another segmentation that you get down to actual application processing capabilities, which you don't really see at the top. But if you look at all this, you really should be thinking about going down to that lowest level, because that's where half the mistakes happen anyways.
Then my mind goes, Frank, to knowledge transfer, right? As people build these complex architectures and the security around the applications, and you already have a shortage in the market of these type of professionals, and then you have to have, once that is implemented, then you have to have the knowledge transfer once person X does leave the company or organization as well, right? I mean, that provides a whole nother level of challenges.
Yes.
Okay. My mind just keeps going into it. Yeah. Well, that's the segues us into this next part, right? Which is future directions, right? What does the future of cybersecurity look like? And through that lens, looking ahead, what do you see as the future of cybersecurity? What does that look like to you?
Oh, it's going to be there.
Has to be.
Has to be there. Threats are going to continue. They're going to be more adaptive. I mean, they're coming adaptive now. And cybersecurity adapts according to the threat also. So we keep on adapting to issues occurring. I'm sure, people will figure out a way trying to get through microsegmentation or over hiding things, but then you got to get down to the lower level. But there are different ways of doing things. I mean, we're going to have quantum resistant, encryption, just to a certain degree. So, okay, I'll be able to know that my wire cannot be decrypted or can be, pushed out. Okay, that's one piece, but there's a lot more pieces than just that.
Right.
And so it's a way of cybersecurity has to be there all the time. The problems we always have is with the people. I mean, the people are the problem when we do everything. You'd be surprised. Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
Phishing, then that's where you get the insider threats, because the phishing, now it's not direct insider threats, it's indirect insider threats, because they open things up and people go in. I mean, they have insider threats too, which are really a problem, which you have very difficult time actually watching. But this is where the monitoring comes in.
Right.
Always monitoring, because a lot of times you can see things occurring that you don't know about and say, well, I don't know why, this is happening. And it should be time-based analysis, person-based analysis, and everything else, which gets a little bit draconian because things happen. Yeah. And I'll tell you my story. My story was always, okay, I was the CTO of the Air Force. I had an exec. We went off and did all sorts of things. Okay. They were trying to monitor my exec. That was a story by itself. And he'd be accessing files everywhere across the Air Force And then a different day, he'd be accessing different files across the Air Force.
Right.
And they're all like, what is he doing? What is actually happening, that he can do, for everything else. So that was one of the issues that we had all the time, was that, he was an insider threat, and he was doing things illicitly until we got it straight as to what exactly he was doing and how to actually control that. That was, and they said, oh, now we really need to segment people as to their role and then allow them to do different things.
Yes. Okay, well, let's talk about the role of AI in automation moving forward. How do you see the role of AI and automation evolving in the context of cybersecurity?
Okay. Well, AI and ML is going to be there all the time because they've been doing transaction flow analysis with it for a very long time. And that's the only way sometimes you can actually get things done, because when you have millions and billions of traffic going through your system, it is very difficult to pinpoint exactly what is going on. And so what you want to be able to do is use this to identify various variances in your system. Now, there are ways to hide variances in your system too, which is always hiding things in the noise. It's been a standard practice of hiding things in the noise. Right. But you have to look at where the noise is, where the data is coming from and where the data is going, and seeing if it's noisy data. This has been it's a trick that people do all the time. I can add noise to my phony data, my illicit data flow, to make it look like it's real data flow, or confusion. So there has to be some AI principles associated with actually looking at the data to a degree where you can get that information out and analyze it correctly. Right. So it's always been there. They're trying deeper and deeper to get things done. It's just one of those things that, it takes a long time to actually get all the processes and technology down to actually work correctly.
Right. But at the end of the day, the essence there is just doing more with less, right? Having that AI be able to, like you mentioned, do those additional tasks that would just be, time consuming. Okay, let's talk about the people, right? You mentioned people. So training and education, education and training are both crucial in cybersecurity. We do our own internal huddles like once a quarter on, don't open executable emails, don't click hyperlinks, like that kind of stuff, right? How should organizations approach training for their employees to keep up with these threats?
The way that seems to work, which is has some drawbacks as well as some good points, is to actually put crap out there and have them fail it, but know that they failed it.
Your secret shopper of sorts, right?
Yes, your secret shopper. Throw something out there. Don't tell them it's coming. See what they do.
Wow.
And then do it again. Don't do everybody. Do 3 people.
Right.
Do 5 people.
Right.
Different threat.
Right.
And you can have a threat briefing that says, all these threats that come, you got to be careful. You got to watch out for them. But never say, tomorrow we're going to have threats.
Right.
But the idea is you can't punish the employee for failing. That's one of the most important things.
Yeah.
You can't punish them for failing. You say, okay, this happened. We understand. We just want you to be more careful next time. Understand that this has happened, and this is the way you should look at it, and don't worry about it. It's in your record. It's one of those things. Understand.
Well said. And then the organization is taking more of a preemptive approach as opposed to reacting after something happened, right?
Yes. I'll tell you a story about that.
Yeah, well said, Frank. Well said.
I did this once. We had a process that would basically says, here's what you have to do when something happens in your facility. And it was things, you got to take the backup tapes, you got to do, you got this, you got to make sure you have inventory of the people, you got to make sure you know where they are. Standard process.
Wow.
We faked a fire at a facility.
Wow.
We faked a fire, the alarms went off, and we watched what they did.
Did the protocols immediately come into play, or were there some failures?
There were some failures.
Yeah. Well, expected, right?
Expected. But I tell you, they never had a failure again.
That's wonderful.
Never.
Practice makes perfect then.
They knew exactly what they had to do. They all their act together. They even practiced it because they never knew that we were going to come back or there would be a real fire.
That's right.
What they would do.
That's right. Well, that's
So,
absolutely brilliant. Yeah.
It was cool because I was talking to the manager in the parking lot and I said, okay, who is there with you on your list? He was like, duh. I think the list is in the car. Okay.
Yeah.
I understand.
Step one, don't leave the list in the car. All right, great. Well, going into personal insights and then getting some of your final thoughts here, Frank. Based on your personal experience and you've had extensive experience in cybersecurity, what has been the most surprising or unexpected challenge that you've seen over in the recent years?
People.
I knew you were going to say that. Yeah.
People. Businesses and people don't believe they will ever be hacked. Yeah. They will never lose their data.
It's never going to happen to me, right?
Never going to happen. Why would it happen to me? Yeah. I'm just a simple person out there in the field. Nobody's going to happen to me. Nobody's going to phish me because I'm just, a low-level employee that does nothing. It's always the case. It's always a surprise that it happens. And, you think after they heard enough stuff, like the banks and the hospitals,
yeah,
like, no, it happened to Joe over there, but it won't happen to me.
My computer's different.
That's right. I'm special.
Yeah.
They understand hackers don't care about that. They just go right at you. They care if you're special or not.
Yeah, and you are a door.
And that's the problem. And, it's difficult because of the training, and it's difficult to give anybody an understanding that this could happen. But just be ready just in case it does.
Yeah. Well said. Well said.
Get ready.
Yes.
Hard.
You take that approach across the organization, right? Across the enterprise, right? That's a great point. Okay, going into the next piece, advice to organizations. I think we may have just touched on it a little bit, but any additional advice that you would give to organizations that are just starting their ZTA strategies and maybe some pitfalls they should avoid?
Try to focus on one thing first. Not everything. It's best to focus like an ICAM first.
Right.
It's the key element that you have to have anyways. You might as well do it first.
Yeah.
It'll take a while. And then start focusing on probably your vulnerability areas, which is your software in your hardware supply chains, in the inventory. Right. They take all those things take a long, long time. Don't get frustrated because this is the never-ending story. People say, how can I possibly do an inventory of my entire system? My entire enterprise was consist of 20 offices across the world. Well, guess what? And there's automated ways of doing it. Buy the tools, do it.
Yeah.
Don't try to put, QR codes in every box and scan them every year. It takes forever to do it manually. Try to automate it as much as possible just because of that.
Yeah.
And you'll benefit. It'll cost a little bit more and more time in the beginning, but it'll benefit much better at the end. It'll be much easier, and you'll feel much safer, and you will be less vulnerable than you think you are.
Well said. Well said around the automation piece. It's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, right?
Yes.
Similar approach. Okay. Well, this kind of goes into our closing thoughts here, Frank. What message would you like to leave with our listeners regarding the importance of staying vigilant and being proactive in their cybersecurity posture?
Just remember, the enemy is always being vigilant and proactive.
Yes.
All the time.
Yes.
And they try to find holes everywhere.
Right.
So understand that you may be the hole they find next.
Well said. Well said. Well, Frank, thank you so much. We appreciate you sharing your insights and expertise with us again today. It's been a pleasure having you on the show. And for our listeners who want to learn more about your work or get in touch, how can they find you, sir?
Oh, they can find me through you guys.
Well said. Well said. That's the cybersecurity piece to this conversation. Well, yeah. So, Frank, thank you so much for your time. Again, to have your insights and to see it through your lens for the 40 minutes we've had you here, it's such a blessing. So, We appreciate your time today.